Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I have the great honor of addressing this meeting, which is a truly international or better European one. When I take a look at the participants, I noticed this morning that more than Turkish language and several other European languages were spoken outside when we were having coffee. In my last rehearsal, my speech was taking about 15-16 minutes, and Mr. Chairman requested us to cut it down to 10 minutes. I really don't know how to do it, but I'll try to. Anyway, let me start by thanking the European movement and TÜSEP as institutions organizing this important Istanbul Congress on developing civil society dialogue in the reform process of candidate and potential candidate countries. I would also like to present the apologies of Mr. Bülent Giller. You may have seen his name on the program, for not being able to make this speech because of his very heavy workload. He is the Secretary General of TİSK, Turkish Confederation of Employer Association. We all know that civil society organizations are key players in promoting a transparent and open participatory democracy. But we also know that they continue to face numerous obstacles that hinder their development in various countries, including Turkey. Therefore, we believe that it is of vital importance to remove these obstacles in order to pave the way for their development, which is not only vital for having a truly democratic regime in a country, but also for benefiting from their contribution to the negotiation process if that country is a candidate for EU membership like our country, Turkey. Mr. Chairman, my short presentation will consist of three interrelated parts. In the first part, I will talk about the role of Turkish civil society organizations in the continuing negotiation process between the EU and our country. In the second part, I will touch upon the operation of the EU-Turkey Joint Consultative Committee, which brings together periodically the representatives of EU and Turkey, social partners and civil society organizations. In the third part, I will try to mention some views regarding the work of Turkish Economic and Social Council. Ladies and gentlemen, I better not to go into the details of our negotiation process, but out of 35 chapters prepared for the negotiation, only 13 have so far been opened, despite the fact that the process started on 3 October 2005. Why? Because, first of all, the European Commission said some chapters cannot be opened because of the Cyprus problem. Then France objected to the opening of some others simply because they smack of full membership. And we were negotiating the full membership. Anyway, and last but least, the Southern Cyprus recently said it would unilaterally object to the opening of some 8 or similar chapters for negotiation. It leaves us 3 negotiation chapters to be opened. And what will happen when they are opened and negotiations started with those chapters? We don't know. In this respect, the following sentences which I borrowed from the second report of the Independent Commission on Turkey, chaired by the former President of Finland, Mr. Martti Ahtisaari, summarizes the present situation very clearly, although the report was published about 2 years ago. Negative reactions since December 2004 from European political leaders and growing hesitation by the European public about further enlargement have given Turkey the impression that it is not welcome, even if it were to fulfill all membership conditions. Moreover, the process itself has been hindered by the effective blockage of more than half of the negotiation chapters, which I just mentioned. Support in Turkey has faded for both the EU accession process and the implementation of difficult and sometimes expensive reforms. Lack of Turkish reforms triggered more European opposition to Turkey's accession. The sense of being excluded from further demoralized Turkish reforms, thus creating a vicious circle. This vicious circle is now undermining, as of today, undermining the many achievements over the past decade inspired by Turkey's convergence with the EU. Now, the problem is to find the ways and means to break this vicious circle. Otherwise, a clearly win-win situation which would result from Turkey's accession would turn into a lose-lose disappointment. As Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan wrote in American weekly Music magazine a couple of weeks ago, we are no more a country that would wait at the EU's door like a docile supplicant. We believe that in this connection, the civil society has an important role to play. So far, the participation of Turkish civil society in the negotiation process, which was thought of as a job of Turkish officialdom only, was not at a satisfactory level despite the Commission's communication of 20 June 2005 on civil society dialogue between EU and candidate countries. The new EU strategy prepared by the Secretariat General for EU Affairs in January 2010 has created a new atmosphere in which the Turkish civil society can play a more effective role in this process. The new EU strategy consists of 4 pillars. The last pillar, which is entitled Turkey's European Union Communication Strategy, aims at developing and implementing comprehensive, flexible, dynamic, effective communication strategy, which is supported by an institutional structure. The strategy's board of consultation and guidance includes representatives from a number of public institutions in Turkey and civil society organizations, including the EU-Turkey Joint Consultative Committee Turkish Wing. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, at this stage it will be in order to talk about the operation of the Turkey-EU Joint Consultative Committee as a very brief case study for the dialogue between the social partner and civil society representatives of the two parties. The Joint Consultative Committee was formed on 16 November 1995 in accordance with the Article 25 of the Ankara Agreement between the then European Economic Community and Turkey. The committee aims to promote dialogue and cooperation between the economic and social interest groups in the European Community and Turkey, and to facilitate the institutionalization of the partners of that dialogue. Joint Consultative Committee has a mixed, cooperative and a two-winged structure, as I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago. The wings are EU and Turkey wings. It has 36 members in total, composed of 18 Turkish and 18 EU representatives, and it has 2 elected co-chairmen, one from Turkish side and the other from the EU side. TİSK President, Mr. Tuğrul Kudatkovilik, was the co-chair of this committee for the last 2 years. The committee's main mission is to develop dialogue and cooperation on the economic and social aspects of Turkey's accession to the EU, and to better inform EU representatives on the economic and social reforms in Turkey. It therefore monitors the social and economic aspects of the accession process. To present a concrete example about the issues taken up and discussed in the twice-yearly committee meetings, I can just mention the titles of the reports presented and discussed during the last 28th meeting held in Edinburgh in September 2010. These were informal economy in Turkey and the EU, women's rights and role in the EU and Turkey, food safety in Turkey and EU. Mr. Chairman, I would like to conclude the second part of my presentation with a couple of remarks about this Joint Consultative Committee. As I have already mentioned, the committee is composed of 36 members, 18 from the EU wing, who are members of the European Economic and Social Committee, and 18 from the Turkish wing, who represent various Turkish social partners and civil society organizations. We know that European Economic and Social Committee has currently 344 members who represent employers, employees, farmers, consumers, and so on. Members are appointed by the Council, by a qualified majority of course, following nominations made by the government of the respective member states. However, once appointed, the members are completely independent of their governments. Despite this fact, as members of the Turkish wing in the Joint Consultative Committee, we hardly hear any views which diverge from the official position of the EU institutions or member states from our European friends in the committee. We wonder whether this conformity stems from the disparity between the ranks of the two wings in the committee. In fact, the Turkish wing is composed of the members who are either the presidents or high-level representatives of the civil society organizations. This is not the case for the representatives in the EU wing. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude my presentation with a couple of words about the Turkish Economic and Social Council. The The Economic and Social Council was established with a Prime Minister's circular order in 1995 in our country, which was issued, this order, immediately after the after the signing of the Customs Union Agreement between Turkey and the EU on March the 6th the same year. Ever since its establishment, it was reorganized about 5 times throughout different periods of political and economic change in Turkey to finally reach its final version on January 26, 1999. The Economic and Social Council is expected to facilitate the dialogue between the social policies and is chaired by our Prime Minister or his deputy. It consists of 18 members representing the government and 21 members representing social partners and civil society. The European Commission's regular reports stated that in the past, the Turkish Economic and Social Council showed an insufficient functioning. The predominant position of the government was undermining the true essence of the Council. The constitutional amendment, which took place in September 2010 in Turkey, gave a constitutional basis to the Economic and Social Council of our country, which is expected to increase its importance and relevance. In our opinion, broadening the Council's mandate and making it a fully fledged consultative body where the majority of members will consist of social partners and civil society representatives will allow the Council to effectively advise the government in the shaping of economic and social policies. Another aspect of major importance in this respect is the representation of the Turkish Economic and Social Council on the European level, namely at the European Economic and Social Committee. In order for a smooth transition of Turkey onto the European level, for the functioning of its institutions and cohesion of its social and economic agenda, it is quite essential for us to include a representative from the Turkish Economic and Social Council to the European Economic and Social Committee on an observatory basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Toy. We will now continue with Mr. Bridgeford. Please,
good morning, everyone, or perhaps good afternoon, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's very nice to be here, and I'd like to thank the European Movement and the Third Sector Foundation of Turkey for setting up this extremely important Congress, and I'd like to thank you for inviting the European Trade Union Confederation to speak here today. And I will represent the European Trade Union Confederation here today. I've been asked to speak about the benefits for social partners, and I will, of course, in general terms, but you will understand that I will be putting my emphasis on the trade unions within this particular process. For your information, the European Trade Union Confederation is a very large organisation, a pan-European organisation, with about 84 different confederations in it, coming from all countries, not only of the European Union, but also from candidate countries themselves. There are also sectoral organisations, metal workers, chemical workers, white-collar workers, etc., who are members of the European Trade Union Confederation. It is the voice of organised labour throughout the continent, and a member of the European movement, which you just heard that prompting from my left-hand side. We also, as I say, have members not only in the EU but in Croatia. I'm thinking of SSH and NHS. We have an observer member from the FYROM, and we have from Turkey, KESK, Turkish, DISK and AKİ, who are members. Indeed, the European Trade Union Confederation has recently carried out a large-scale project, the largest it's ever carried out, in fact, a civil society dialogue project here in Turkey and in the European Union, which gave an opportunity for trade unionists from Turkey and the European Union to get to know each other a little bit better, to understand what's going on in the different countries, and to share their information and their experience. One of the very positive aspects of what we've heard earlier on today about people-to-people relationships between Turkey and the European Union. So there's a real understanding between like-minded people about the situations in the different countries. We were able to have seminars in a number of different countries in the European Union: France, Italy, Sweden, the UK, Belgium, and also in Slovakia. And we were fortunate to have seminars here in Turkey, in Antalya, Ankara, Izmir, Istanbul, Diyarbakir, and in Trabzon. And this was an excellent opportunity for trade unionists from the different areas to be able to come together. And so you can imagine it's a great pleasure for me. I attended many of these meetings, and it's a great pleasure for me personally to be back again here on Turkish soil. So that's another personal advantage of being able to be invited to this particular conference. I'm going to say a few things. One is about social dialogue at the national and the European level between employers and trade unions. I'll also say something about the relations between trade unions and civil society organisations, both at the national and at the European level. And I will do it as fast as I possibly can. Now, the benefits for the social partners are obvious. These partnerships make it possible for them to agree on matters, mostly labour market matters, which are of concern for the interests of the people that they represent. Employers and shareholders on the one hand, and workers on the other, trade unions on the other. And depending upon the different traditions in the different countries, there may also be government involvement in these particular discussions and agreements and negotiations, most normally at the national level. It is more beneficial for the partners to decide on these issues themselves, as they are the ones that represent most clearly those people concerned by these matters. These partnerships, as you can imagine, may cover many things: pay, working time, holidays, training, dismissals, disciplinary procedures, health and safety regulations. There's a whole series of different elements that are absolutely crucial for the working lives of different employees, and this is the best way to be able to come to an agreement about those terms, conditions and pay. And generally, these partnerships, which are part of a system of social dialogue, as it's described in some countries and at the European level, or collective bargaining, as it's described in others, lead on to agreements which are binding on the social partners themselves. Collective bargaining can be differentiated largely by the levels at which it takes place, and I'm not going to go into all the different types, but the important point is that there can be national, cross-sectoral, there can be national sectoral. There are also an increasing trend that we see, there is an increasing trend towards decentralized collective bargaining and company collective bargaining. But the picture within the European Union is a very varied picture. It's not possible to say it is like this within the European Union. There is no norm as such. And so this is quite important, I think, for candidate countries, because there isn't a specific type of collective bargaining that one could imagine was the rule, as it were, within the European Union. But let me give you an example of a recent series of agreements between trade unions and employers in Spain. This time, of course, very much with the the cover and the assistance and the participation of the government. Only a week or two ago, there was a very important national cross-sectoral agreement between trade unions and employers in Spain. It covered pensions, increasing the pension age, the retirement age, measures to improve the employment of young people, a particularly important issue in Spain, as I'm sure you know, with 40% unemployment amongst young people, industrial policy, energy policy, and innovation. So there were very important issues there that the employers and the trade unions wanted to agree upon, with many, many difficulties during the process. But now there is an agreement, and it is one that clearly serves the interests of all parties. Even this week we have, this week in Belgium, which also has a tradition of national cross-sectoral bargaining, we have the end of the process of an important agreement. There has been an agreement in principle, but indeed coming to an agreement in practice with the full support of all the organisations, particularly the trade union organisations, has been extremely difficult. And it will be interesting to see exactly how this ends up. But the most important thing is that it covers pay and pensions, and also the status of blue-collar and white-collar workers. Now, as I said before, there are trends now where we're heading towards decentralisation, as there is increasing pressure, particularly from employers, to adopt more flexible bargaining agendas. But there is a very serious concern as well, and that it's increasingly difficult to come to agreements. And when you look at the situation in some of the EU countries, and I'm thinking particularly of Ireland, Greece, Portugal and Spain, generally the social climate is extremely, extremely tense, and particularly as a result of the austerity measures that are being introduced in those countries. Moreover, there's a very serious matter of great importance that we're seeing now with some of these so-called rescue packages, where elements of the collective agreements are slowly being forgotten. And I'm referring specifically to minimum wages, and I'm referring specifically to Ireland. These are very, very unwelcome developments. Now, this of course presupposes that everyone has the right to collective bargaining, and this right is respected differently in different countries, but I'm not going to go into that. It also, and this is particularly important, requires the partners to be credible. Are they representative? And on the trade union side, is it possible to say that there is a right to join a trade union? And is this right respected? And is this right supported? And clearly there is an opportunity for improvement in many, many countries as far as that's concerned. And then there's a question of will they be able to act as trade unions freely? That is a cause of concern in some particular countries, and I'm thinking particularly of the discussions that have taken place within the International Labour Office in Geneva about the extent to which trade unions can or cannot go about their work as they would wish. But what is true is that there is a decline in trade union membership. And we are seeing that in virtually all countries in the EU, with, strangely, and I can't explain this, so don't ask me a question on it, a small increase, specifically in Belgium and Malta, but I cannot explain. So those are the elements as far as the as collective bargaining at the the national level is concerned. Sometimes, of course, this collective bargaining doesn't function very well. Sometimes there is no agreement. What happens in those cases? Well, in some cases, life goes on, and the employers introduce the changes that they would like, and others, of course, this can lead to industrial action. There again, it is essential within all countries for trade unions to be able to have the right to strike, not only, of course, in the private sector, but also in the public sector. But let me just now move on to another issue. Well, perhaps I'll just go through that very quickly. And that's to do with socio-economic partnerships. I'm thinking about the European level. and I'm particularly thinking about the fact that when trade unions and employers agree at the European level, there is a possibility to extend this agreement into labour law, which is a rather unusual procedure. And I will refer to many agreements that have taken place, but 3 specifically, which have then ended up as labour law, which is throughout the whole of the European Union. And they refer to parental leave, to part-time work, and to fixed-term contracts, all of which have started as a result of agreements between employers and trade unions. And interestingly, of course, for those countries who are wishing to join the European Union, these form part of the social acquis. This is the body of law that you will be able to benefit when members of the European Union. Let me just briefly turn to the question of work between trade unions and civil society groups. Simply to say that there is now more and more activity between trade unions and civil society groups because it serves the interests of both to be able to work together. This is not specifically in the labour market, more in a broader socio-economic or socio-political forum. I could give you examples, but I won't. Not because they're secret, but because I'm running out of time. But I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that this is also possible at the European level, and particularly within the context of the European Economic and Social Committee. It's already been mentioned by the previous speaker, and will certainly be mentioned again by Staffan Nielsen. I don't wish to say anything about that, apart from to say I would like to congratulate the European Economic and Social Committee for setting up the Joint Consultative Committee on Turkey. I think it's done some very, very interesting work, recently calling for more visible progress in terms of EU enlargement debates involving civil society organisations towards EU accession, and it's presented a report on trade union rights to the Turkish government. There are also many other examples of trade unions at the European and at the national level working together with civil society organisations. It is not my intention now to go through them, you'll be pleased to hear. But all I would say is that, as you can see, the European Trade Union Confederation, it supports partnerships with employers' organisations, particularly as regards labour market issues, and also it supports partnerships with civil society groups on appropriate subjects for broader social or socio-economic objectives. I hope that that's been of use to you, but just before I finish, I would like to say one thing. In the project that we organised between Turkey and the European Union, we produced a series of training materials which are encompassed within these different books and booklets. And amongst them, there are 9, in fact. It's called On the Offensive. And amongst them, there is one which is trade unions and civil society. There's also trade unions and women, trade unions and collective bargaining, trade unions and freedom of movement of workers, trade unions and immigration into the European Union. There are many of these. I will leave them with the European movement, and I will also leave they're more difficult to get now in paper form, but they can all be downloaded from the ETUC website. I will give the website address, and they are available in English, French, Greek, Slovak, Dutch, Italian, and also in Turkish. Thank you very much for your attention.